Do you honestly believe books can wash the grime out of your bloodline? The words fell like drops of acid onto cold steel. No one else was there, only two figures in the penthouse at 3 a.m, Alistair Finch and Serena Washington. Serena lifted her head. She sat low on the floor, gloved hands still wet from bleach, a bucket of water at her side, rags folded neatly in stacks. On her knees rested a heavy tome Securities law and corporate fraud. Its stiff, yellowed pages trembled. Faintly with her breath, a paradoxical scene. A black woman in a janitor's uniform, scrubbing glass while reading Securities law. From the suspended glass staircase, Alistair descended at leisure. His white Charvet silk pajamas glistened under the light, a glass of 30-year Macallan in hand. Each step struck like a judge's gavel. His gaze fell on Serena with the detached contempt of someone accustomed to seeing people as stains marring his view. The insult was not born of anger but of amusement, a cruel pastime to watch how the lowest would flinch when reminded of dirty blood. Serena did not flinch, but the book in her hands compressed slightly, her knuckles whitening. Grip so subtle it seemed like a storm caged beneath ice. Her lips pressed together, teeth clenched against the words that threatened to escape. The silence was not submission, it was resistance. Alistair halted at the final step. He sipped his whiskey, tilted his head, and let his voice drip venom. Do you think words will save you? Someone like you could read forever, but you'll always be a blemish in this apartment. Books don't change the truth. The only thing you belong to is the mop. His mouth curved. Not in joy, but in sadistic pleasure at what he believed was the shattering of her illusions. Serena closed the book. The clack echoed dry and sharp. Small, but in the luxurious stillness, it rang like a judge's hammer. She rose slowly, but straight-backed, chin lifted just enough not to bow. Her dark eyes met his, unyielding, neither fearful nor pleading. Only a chilling emptiness that mirrored him back to himself. The stare furrowed his brow. He was accustomed to downcast eyes, to lowered shoulders. Her silence was not the silence he knew. It was defiance without words. He set his glass on the onyx bar, his tone sharp as a blade. Get out. People like you don't belong here. You never will. Each syllable landed like a hammer blow. It was more than dismissal. It was an exorcism, a proclamation that her very existence had no place in his sanctum. Serena bent down, peeled off her gloves, and placed them neatly beside the bucket. Her fingertips trembled, not from fear, but from the fury pressed tight in her chest. She lifted the book, brushed its cover with the edge of her sleeve, a small gesture. It's like sharpening a blade before sheathing it. She turned without a word. Her footsteps were soft, but each landed with the weight of permanence carved into stone. The glass door slid open, splitting her face into light and shadow. Alistair leaned back and poured himself another drink. In his eyes, the space was clean again. Did not realize that at that moment he had carved a scar that would never fade. Serena entered the elevator. The polished steel reflected her image, gray uniform, book clutched to her chest. But the eyes staring back were transformed. Not the eyes of the humiliated, but of a strategist confirming phase 1. Her heartbeat slowed, steady like a war drum. Her lips curved faintly, a smile as sharp as a blade. A silent vow pulsed through her mind. He didn't fire me, freed me. The elevator doors closed, severing her from the gilded cage above. Below, the city stretched wide, its lights like a million eyes. To Alistair, they were lights of obedience. To Serena, they were a map. And tonight, the map had it starting. Point, phase 1. Complete, Harlem. 4 a.m. Serena unlocked the door of her small apartment tucked between crumbling row houses. The wooden door was flaking paint, the metal knob cold as chain steel. Inside, the room barely fit a bed, a tiny dining table, and a sagging bookshelf. No onyx glass, no Macallan whiskey, only the smell of damp and the groan of old pipes. This was her true dominion. She set securities law and corporate fraud on the table, shrugged off her coat, and dropped down before a battered wooden box. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside lay a worn architect's pencil, an a frayed notebook, Memory surged without invitation. Her father, Marcus Washington. A black man with hands always dusted in graphite, eyes bright like someone who could see a whole city in a sketch. He once stood at the podium of Howard University, graduating top of his class in architecture. He believed black men could design skyscrapers, not just clean their windows, but the world never forgave that dream. His small firm had secured a project for affordable housing. He drew plans filled with light, playgrounds for children, and rooftop gardens. Then the contract vanished. The land was resold. A giant real estate conglomerate devoured it, and eventually through layers of shell companies. It landed in the hands of Alistair Finch, the man from tonight. Her father lost everything: money, reputation, hope. His weak heart finally failed him. Though Serena knew the true cause was different, a system built to grind men like him into dust. He left one line in his notebook: "They can steal the blueprint, but they cannot steal the vision." Serena flipped the notebook open. The ink was smudged, but the words still burned. Tonight, Alistair's talk of dirty blood had struck that legacy like a match to tinder. This wasn't only vengeance for her father. It was vindication for an entire lineage spat upon. She rose and moved to the bookshelf. Rows of textbooks: finance, forensic accounting, corporate law. She had consumed them page by page, word by word, until she graduated from Wharton with honors. But every application to banks, to investment firms, came back with polite rejection: not a fit for company culture. A code for the truth that black women had no place in Wall Street's ivory towers. Serena understood. She could never slay the monster from outside. To bring it down, she had to crawl inside its belly. She crossed to the corner of the room. Hanging on the wall was her cleaning uniform: gray, plain, nameless, faceless. The perfect disguise. No one suspects. Janitor. No one notices when she passes through hallways, enters boardrooms, picks up trash, wipes tables. In that invisibility, she had found power. She zipped herself back into the uniform, her hand brushing the pocket where a small USB rested. Inside were months of collected data, contracts, transactions, and recordings, fragments assembling into a vast picture. The picture her father once drew in pencil, now redrawn in money and blood. She glanced into the mirror. The reflection showed a black woman in cheap work clothes. But behind her eyes, her father's figure hovered. He was there with her, not just as memory, but as a heartbeat shared. "Dad," she whispered, "they think I'm only polishing prison bars, but I'm measuring the foundations for their grave." A thin smile touched her lips, not gentle, but sharp as a blade. Outside, dawn began to spill across Harlem. Pale light draped over decayed buildings and graffiti-stained walls, a city parallel to Park Avenue. Yet today, Serena saw it clearly. Both cities shared the same foundation. And she would be the one to redraw the blueprint. The plan was in motion. The ghost of her father was no longer in the past. He was her compass. The coffee shop sat on a Bronx corner, open 24/7. A flickering green neon sign cast its broken light onto rain-slick sidewalks, like a scar spreading across the street. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of strong coffee, laced with greasy kitchen smoke. Old plastic chairs creaked under truck drivers and night shift workers. No one looked twice at Serena Washington when she walked in, thin coat wrapped tight, baseball cap pulled low. Here she wasn't the window girl of Park Avenue penthouses. She was just another face in the shadows. And that was her advantage. In the far corner, Mateo Diaz was already waiting. A Latino man in his 30s, thin, with dark hair, unruly. His leather jacket was worn, his shoes scuffed at the heel. On the table sat a battered laptop plastered with stickers from movements. No justice, no peace. Press freedom. He looked up, wary eyes clouded with the fatigue of someone too familiar with failure. Serena slid into the seat across from him. No handshake. Only the scrape of a chair against tile. "Who are you?" Mateo asked, voice low, half suspicious, half defiant. Serena didn't answer immediately. She set a small, unlabeled black USB on the table. I have what you're looking for. Something that can bury Alistair Finch. Mateo gave a short, bitter laugh. I've heard that a dozen times. It's always trash. Finch is too big to fall. I've chased him for 5 years and never held one solid piece of evidence. Serena said nothing. She pulled out her own laptop and flipped it open. The glow of the screen lit her face stern, still, her eyes as sharp as blades. She typed in a long password, each keystroke beating steady like a drum. Mateo leaned closer, and his laugh died. This wasn't a rumor. It was a database audio. Recordings, spreadsheets, contracts, money trails. Each entry is stamped with dates, codes, and transaction chains. Organized, precise, not a leak. Case, he murmured under his breath, almost in disbelief. This isn't a leak. This is a prosecution. Case Serena studied his reaction. She recognized the look of a man worn by humiliation, dismissed by editors, rejected by major newsrooms as too sensitive, ignored by police. The same look she carried, the gaze of someone repeatedly cast aside, still clinging to justice like a final anchor. Mateo swallowed hard, eyes glued to the screen. How did you get all this? Serena leaned back, voice steady. I clean. I stay silent. They talk in front of me as if I don't exist. I know the door codes, the meeting schedules, pick up trash, but I keep what matters. People throw away more than they realize. I just piece the fragments back together. He stared at her, a silence stretching long, broken only by the clink of spoons and coffee cups. Then he nodded slow, but sure. You're not a journalist, but you work like an investigator, Serena replied. I'm not investigating. I'm building. A dossier. A blueprint. Like my father once built houses, only this one will crush. Finch, Mateo exhaled, leaning back, a flicker of hope sparking for the first time in years. He scrolled quickly through the files, Finch's voice sneering at partners, calling displaced black communities garbage. Contracts proving land meant for affordable housing had been flipped into luxury developments. Internal memos of lawyers discussing how to clear out poor tenants as if sweeping trash. Mateo shut the laptop, his hands shaking. He looked up, voice hushed. Serena, if this is real, we're not just talking financial fraud. This is a crime. This is cultural genocide. She neither nodded nor denied, only laid her hand atop the USB. I know, and you know. The question is, do you dare write it? Mateo was silent. For a moment, old memories flickered in his eyes. Being called a spick reporter, watching an editor tear his article to shreds in front of him. He inhaled deeply, then nodded. We'll do it, but this alone isn't enough. We'll need more. Serena met his gaze, her voice unwavering. Then we'll find more. I have the keys. You have the pen. Both of us dismissed, invisible, and that invisibility is our weapon. Their pact was sealed not by handshake, but by eyes locked in silent agreement. The alliance of outcasts. Outside, the rain thickened, pounding the tin roof like war drums. Serena rose, pulling her coat tighter. Mateo stood too. Together they stepped into the Bronx night, two silhouettes under neon haze. Small against the city, yet carrying new weight. The weight of truth. Serena pulled out her phone and played a recording. Alistair Finch's voice spilled into the rain. Get rid of them. They don't deserve the ground they stand on. Mateo froze, eyes wide. He understood. This was no longer journalism. This was an indictment of an entire system. And for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. Serena slipped the phone back. Eyes fixed toward distant Manhattan, towers glowing like white pyramids. Her voice was low, measured. You asked who I am. I'm the daughter of an architect whose dream Finch murdered. I don't wipe glass to make it shine. I wipe it to see him clearly.
Oh.
Mateo swallowed, then let out a short laugh, not bitter this time, but lit with fire rediscovered. He extended his hand. Serena paused, then clasped it. The rain poured on, relentless. Yet in that moment, the Bronx was no longer forgotten shadows. It became the birthplace of a quiet uprising. The alliance was forged. and Alistair Finch had just gained another enemy with a pen, standing beside the woman with a memory sharp as steel. Monday morning, 6 a.m. Alistair Finch woke in his glass. Penthouse, as always. But no phone rang, no assistant, no lawyer, only a dead silence. He turned on the TV, and the world exploded before his eyes. On every news channel, his own face, magnified, repeated endlessly. The headlines scrolled. The Finch Empire, fraud, discrimination, deceit, audio recordings played on loop, his own voice cold and damning. Get rid of them. They don't deserve the ground they stand on. Each word stabbed back into his ears like mirrored blades. The Macallan glass shook in his hand, spilling amber drops across the floor. He lunged for the phone. No signal. No one answered. Company. Stock was in free fall in pre-market trading, numbers bleeding red, billions evaporating in seconds. He turned toward the window. Park Avenue was no longer a serene ribbon of light. Dozens of FBI vans swarmed the street below, blue and red strobes, crawling upward like firebugs from the earth. The world beneath him had become predator, and he the prey. For the first time in his life, he felt powerless. In Harlem, Serena wasn't watching TV. She sat in her small kitchen with her mother, a frail woman gripping her daughter's hand, eyes brimming. The tears were no longer bitter, but the release of years of silence. Serena said nothing. She listened to the spoon stirring tea, to her mother's uneven breath. Inside her, it wasn't glee that rose, but emptiness. A space once crowded with fury, now slowly filled by something else. Justice. Later, she went alone to the small cemetery where her father lay. The grass was damp with dew, the headstone cold, carved with Marcus Washington. She set down the morning's New York Times. On its front page, Alistair's face, caught in a photo of panic and defeat. Serena stood a long time, saying nothing. But her silence was its own words. Father, at last they had to hear the truth. At Finch Group headquarters, chaos detonated. Employees fled, papers scattered, phones shrieked, computer screens blared, FBI raid, stock plunge. See you under investigation? Alistair was forced into the lobby. Camera flashes strobed like machine guns. FBI agents twisted his arms back, cold steel cuffs snapping shut. The metal clinked, dry and final. He lifted his head, straining for arrogance, but panic shone in his eyes. Those who once bowed before him now stared as if at a stranger. The superiority he thought eternal was shattering fast as glass under pressure. On the giant lobby screen, a live interview played. Serena Washington, upright, crisp in business attire, eyes steady. The caption below, whistleblower exposes. Finch Empire. Alistair froze. His eyes locked onto the screen. Serena gazed straight into the camera and for an instant, straight into him. There was no hatred, no triumph. Only a cold truth. He had lost. And worst of all, the person who brought him down was the very one he once dismissed as the girl who wiped prison bars. In that instant, his own words returned to him. Books can wash the grime out of your bloodline. Now he understood. Not only books, but intellect, patience, silence itself had become her weapons. And it was his arrogance about bloodlines that had blinded him, leading him to his grave. In the Bronx, Mateo watched live on his laptop. When he saw Serena introduced not as janitor, but financial analyst, he smiled. A weary smile, but blazing bright. He typed her a message. He's finished. You did it.
Where did it?
Answer, she was walking through the cemetery, coat whipping in the wind. In her mind, her father's voice echoed. They can steal the blueprint, but they cannot steal the vision. Final scene. Alistair led away between two agents. Flashbulbs, shouts, and questions hammered at him. Did you steal? Did you discriminate? Do you regret? He was silent, but his eyes were a collapsing black hole. On the lobby screen opposite him, Serena remained calm, unshaken. Their gazes met through glass, through crowds, through the cuffs. A single look enough to end an era. Alistair understood. The greatest humiliation of his life was not the handcuffs, not the money lost. It was being defeated by the one he had branded the stain in the bloodline. And the orchestra of his downfall had struck its final chord. The federal courtroom in Manhattan was packed. Cameras lined the aisles, flashes erupting like lightning. Reporters swarmed like vultures. On the defendant's chair sat Alistair Finch, shrunken, swallowed by an orange prison uniform. His wrists were shackled, the red marks etched deep into skin that once bore a Patek watch. The prosecutor rose, voice ringing like a bell. This is not just financial fraud. This is a systematic crime designed to strip vulnerable communities of opportunity. Mr. Finch did not merely steal money, he stole futures. Behind him sat the displaced faces carved by hardship. An elderly woman wept, clutching a photograph of her former apartment. A 12-year-old boy gripped a hand-painted sign that was our home. The judge's gavel struck. Alistair Finch, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without parole. Your assets will be seized for restitution. You will have no freedom and no empire. Alistair lifted his head, lips trembling, but his voice rasped into nothing. A dynasty once towering, now reduced to a criminal record. Across the city, Serena Washington was not in the courtroom. She was preparing to speak before the city council. The chamber blazed with lights. Council members, politicians, and reporters filled every seat. Serena stood at the podium, tailored black suit, hair pinned high. Behind her, the screen bore the logo, Washington Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, voice low but firm, today is not just a meeting, it is a promise. We will return to the community what was stolen. A councilman frowned. And what guarantees this project will not repeat Finch's mistakes? Serena stood tall, eyes unflinching, transparency. Every budget, every contract will be public. The people will be the true shareholders. No one will erase them from this map again. For a moment, silence hung. Then a Latino councilman nodded. It's time this city was built by those who were left behind. Applause broke, hesitant, then roaring. Reporters scribbled furiously. Serena breathed deep, feeling the room shift. No one saw her as a window girl anymore. They saw an architect of the future. Weeks later, the land Finch once claimed for luxury towers now bore a new sign. Washington Housing Project, affordable homes for all. That morning, crowds filled the lot. Children darted with blue and white balloons. Families carried photos of lost loved ones, as if inviting them to witness. A local jazz band played, trumpets blaring brighter than the excavators rumbling to start. Serena stood on a wooden stage beside her mother. Her mother's silver hair shimmered in the wind, eyes wet but alight. Mateo was there too, camera slung, manuscript in hand, the article that had shaken the empire. Serena took the microphone, her voice rising above the wind. Once, someone told me books can't wash blood. They were right. Books don't wash blood. But books can rewrite the future. And today, we begin rewriting this place. The crowd fell silent, then thundered with applause. Tears streamed. A little girl rushed forward, pressing an old plastic flower into Serena's hands. For your dad, she whispered. Serena clutched it tight, choked, then smiled. She opened the wooden box she had carried. Inside lay her father's worn architect's pencil and his old notebook. She placed the pencil on a fresh design. His lines still lingered, now continued by her hand. The excavator roared, steel biting, into soil. The sound rang out like an overture. Serena closed her eyes, and in its echo heard her father's whisper. They can steal the blueprint, but never the vision. She opened them, a tear sliding free, but her smile was radiant. By dusk, the sun cast red across the ground. Serena walked the site's edge, each step like driving a stake into the new foundation. No longer invisible in gilded cages, she stood among her people, named, trusted. She whispered, steady. He thought I was only polishing prison bars. But I measured the foundations of his grave, and on his ashes I built a home. The wind lifted a page from the blueprint, carried it high before dropping it gently on the raw earth, the new foundation. No more gilded cages, only open sky. The story closes, but the foundation of justice had only begun. Once, a man sat on a glass throne, believing wealth and power defined human worth. For him, a single sentence could erase a lifetime's struggle. For him, dirty. Blood was reason enough to bury every dream. But one woman refused to accept that definition. Serena Washington once dismissed as invisible turned humiliation into a weapon, silence into a strategy, pain into a foundation. She did not destroy, only to avenge. She built so that justice could stand. Alistair Finch collapsed. His empire was devoured by arrogance and hate. But Serena rose not as a victim, but as architect of a new society where bloodlines no longer measure worth, but talent, integrity, and vision. And you see, justice does not arrive in grand gestures. It arrives in the smallest details. A heavy book, a forgotten USB, a recorded sentence. The very things dismissed became the blades that ended his reign. Now I ask you, if you were in Serena's place, humiliated, belittled, would you stay silent and keep polishing bars? Or would you turn silence into a blueprint for a fairer tomorrow? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this is not just Serena's story. It belongs to everyone who's ever been overlooked, cast aside, told they don't belong here. If you believe justice can still be built even from a Shezin, like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story. Spread these stories so no one feels they fight alone. Sometimes, one person standing up is enough to redraw the foundation of the world.